Lesson 1. Introducing ITIL. Welcome to Lesson 1. In this lesson, we're going to introduce ITIL as a concept, including the meaning of best practice, why ITIL is successful, what we mean by service. Let's start by introducing ITIL. ITIL is considered to be best practice for IT service management. It was developed by the UK government and is now globally adopted by many organizations in both the public and private sector. ITIL is not a prescriptive standard that must be followed. It is a framework that organizations can adopt and adapt to improve the way they deliver their IT services. ITIL is a widely recognized source of best practice. It allows organizations to deliver services that meet their customers' needs at a price their customer is willing to pay. In today's climate, organizations cannot afford to stand still. They need to review their performance and compare it to their competitors and make sure they are constantly improving. Using the best practice available in the public domain can support improvement. Sources including public frameworks like ITIL and standards like ISO 20000 can all be used to add value. ISO 20000 is the standard for service management and is used to certify an organization's processes and management systems. If organizations benchmark themselves against their competitors and continue to invest in skills and capabilities, they will remain competitive. This thinking does not just apply to the private sector. Public sector organizations such as local and central government departments also need to demonstrate that they offer quality services and value for money. This diagram shows the many sources of service management practice. You can see how industry practices, training, and education are among the sources an organization should consider. Enablers, for example employees and suppliers, aggregate these sources to bring together what is relevant. Best practice must be passed through a filter of the drivers and scenarios relevant to the organization before it is fit for purpose. For example, a financial organization cannot just pick up the ITIL books and implement ITIL. They need to assess what regulations they have to comply with, what their competitors are doing, and what their customers want before they can go ahead. We've mentioned already that ITIL is considered to be best practice for IT service management. Let's consider why ITIL is so successful. As we study, think of your own organization. What problems could ITIL best practice help you to address? ITIL is not academic and theoretical. It's based on the experience of IT service management practitioners and offers a practical approach. The introduction of a service focus means that IT stops thinking about technology and starts to think about how to deliver value to the customer. Common processes and practices and a strong service management framework all help to support the focus on value. You can see some of the reasons why ITIL is so successful here. It's vendor neutral. ITIL is not linked to one supplier or one technology or one industry. This means it can be adopted across all types and sizes of organization. It's non-prescriptive. Organizations need to adopt and adapt the elements of ITIL that work for them and their customers. It's best practice. ITIL draws on experience from service management practitioners across the globe. ITIL is seen as being preferable to the proprietary information that builds up in organizations and staff members. Proprietary knowledge isn't usually documented. It exists because it's built up over time. We've always done it like that. This means it's not challenged or improved, and can cause a real risk if an experienced staff member leaves and takes their proprietary knowledge with them. It's time for your first exercise. Throughout this course, you will find a number of exercises that will help to reinforce the material you've studied It's really important you complete each exercise to reinforce your learning. For each course exercise, you'll find a suggested answer in the study guide for the lesson. You can also send your exercise answer to a tutor to have it reviewed. Just use the tutor link. This exercise is going to ask you to think about how ITIL helps organizations. Plan to spend 15 minutes on this exercise, and don't forget to review the suggested solution. ITIL practices allow organizations to deliver benefits, improve return on investment, and be successful. List 10 ways in which ITIL will help an organization. Here's a hint. Try thinking about the problems you have in your organization. For example, is communication between teams poor? Would better processes help to improve this? Good luck! We're going to move on now and study an important definition. We're going to study exactly what we mean by a service. Let's get started. Think about the word service. What do you mean when you say a service? What has to be in place for a service to exist? Think about services you might have used today. Getting money from an ATM, or using a car parking lot or a website. What is good service and what is bad service? A typical service needs to have a provider and a customer. Most service providers want to make sure that their customers come back and use their services again. The ITIL definition of a service is: a service is a means of delivering value to customers by facilitating outcomes customers want to achieve without the ownership of specific costs and risks. ITIL also defines an IT service more specifically. This is a service provided by an IT service provider. An IT service is made up of a combination of information technology, people, and processes. A customer-facing IT service directly supports the business processes of one or more customers, and its service level targets should be defined in a service level agreement. Other IT services, called supporting services, are not directly used by the business, but are required by the service provider to deliver customer-facing services. For example, a customer-facing service could be a retail website. A supporting service could be the data backup that makes sure the website's data is safe. ITIL recommends the development of outcome-based definitions of services. This means that we look at the customer outcome the service delivers, not the technology we are offering to the customer. An outcome is defined as the result of carrying out an activity, following a process, or delivering an IT service. Outcome can refer to intended or actual results. Customers must be happy with the service they receive. If not, they will go elsewhere. They need to trust their service provider and believe that the service will continue to meet their needs in the future. Customer expectations will change over time. Advances like wireless networking were exciting in the past, but they become part of the standard expected service over time. Service providers must track their customers' expectations and update services to make sure they are still delivering value. It's very important for a service provider to understand their services. This includes looking at how services relate to each other and which customers use which services. If a service is performing poorly and doesn't have many customers, it may be retired. A service that is performing well and attracting lots of customers may receive more investment. Services can be broken down into 3 classifications. They can be classified as core, enabling, or enhancing. We're going to look at these definitions now. Let's start with core services. Core services deliver the basic outcomes desired by one or more customers. These services represent the value the customer wants and will pay for. They are what attracts the customer in the first place. Customers must be satisfied with a core service. The next classification is enabling services. These need to be in place for the core service to be delivered. The customer may not even know the enabling service exists, but it is essential. For example, without the network, you cannot access any of the applications you use in your office. Customers will not see enabling services as being a service that they use. They are a basic factor that makes sure the core service can be delivered. Finally, there are enhancing services. These are non-essential services that are added to the core service to tempt or excite the customer. There is always a danger that customers will get bored with enhancing services and see them as being part of the core service. Service providers need to make sure they review their enhancing services regularly and update them if necessary. Let's look at an example of core, enabling, and enhancing services. Think about the last time you entered into a mobile phone contract. The core service you were looking for was the ability to make calls while away from home, and that was what you were willing to pay for. If the service provider had tried to charge you for the enabling services, such as their network, separately, you would not have been impressed. As part of the deal, you will have been offered enhancing services like free messages, access to a music library, or the latest handset. How did that influence your decision? You can see how the enhancing services have changed. Text messaging was an exciting enhancement only a few years ago, but now it's part of the core service. Services can be very simple and easy to define, or very complex. Service providers should try and define their services from the customer's perspective. What does the customer think the service does? What services do you offer to your customers? Service providers must be efficient and effective. Services should only be provided if there is a demand for them, and they need to be provided in a cost-effective way. It's useful if a service provider can offer a generic set of services to lots of customers, although this isn't always practical. Offering generic services allows the provider to use economies of scale to compete based on price, as well as flexibility to tailor the service to meet the customer's exact needs. Service providers can use service packages to help them offer their services to customers. Service packages are made up of combinations of core, enabling, and enhancing services. The package contains two or more services that have been bundled together to meet the customer's needs. Customers will want different levels of service as part of their service package. One customer might be prepared to pay more for 24/7 support. Another customer might want to pay less to just receive support during office hours. These different levels are documented in a service level package, which is then delivered with a service package. It all sounds complicated, but it's not. Service providers need to make sure they give their customers what they want. Creating a service package with just the right combination of services and service levels will make sure that customers are kept happy. While we're studying services, we also need to study the difference between internal and external services. Internal services are delivered to departments or business units in the same organization as the service provider. For example, the IT department delivers services to sales and to accounting. External services are delivered to an external customer, who could be an individual or another organization. For example, you might be a customer for your internet service provider. Internal services usually support internal activity. For example, a payroll service makes sure that staff are paid on time. External services support business outcomes. If an organization sells products via a website, the external services are the website, stock system, and so on. It's usually easier to see how external services provide value. For example, if our website is down, we lose $10,000 an hour. Internal services need to be linked to external services before their value can be understood. An example of this could be, If the payroll system goes down, the warehouse staff won't work, and then we'll lose $10,000 an hour. This diagram shows the internal and external services. Notice how they break down into supporting services, internal customer-facing services, and external customer-facing services. You can see how the internal services support the external customer-facing services. What types of service do you work with? Are they internal or external, or both? Let's go into the different types of service in a bit more detail, starting with supporting services. These services are often infrastructure services. They need to be in place for other services to be delivered, but the business might not be aware of them. For example, the network is a supporting service. If the network isn't available, many other services will be unavailable. Next, there are internal customer-facing services. These are used by customers in the same organization as the service provider. For example, your finance team might use an accounting service to track payments that have been made. The third type of IT service is an external customer-facing service. Here, the customer is not part of the same organization as the service provider. For example, when you use an ATM, you are an external customer for that particular service. Let's recap. An IT service is a service provided to one or more customers by an IT service provider. The service is usually made up of a combination of people, processes, and technology. Each service should use IT to help the customer. If not, the customer won't want to use the service. We've just studied the three classifications of service: core, enabling, and enhancing, as well as the three types of service: supporting, internal customer-facing, and external customer-facing. Why not try to classify your services? What types of service do you offer? All of the IT services we offer should ultimately support business services. These are the services that an organization offers to its customers. If an organization is involved in automobile rental, it will need IT services to support areas including customer tracking and internet sales. Before we complete this lesson, here's a quick quiz to test what you've learned. At the end of the quiz, you'll receive your result and can try the questions again if you would like to.